Hello everyone and welcome back to another drawing tutorial video. In today's video we're going to be looking at part 1 of how to draw a fit anime man. Just like always, we're going to start with a super low opacity layer for our construction lines. And if you're doing this traditionally, just make sure you draw super lightly so that way anything you fix or correct or remove won't be visible in the final product. But first, just like always, we'll start with our head circle. So just trying to get a circle shape, doesn't have to be perfect. Just need something to work off of. From there I'm going to take a ruler so we can have a perfect center line here. And this will be important for balancing our character off of it as well as getting the character symmetrical. So next we'll just construct a very simple head. Just give him kind of a elongated jaw here. Something like this. Do some simple ear shapes. And a little bit of a nose. But I'm not concerned about the detail on the face since this is going to be a figure study. So from there, we can draw in our shoulder line, which we'll put it basically like a jaw length below his chin. And then we can do our rib cage, which, unlike my other tutorials, this time we'll actually make the ribs a bit wider than his head. And this will give us a bit bigger of a frame to build all of the muscles and stuff on. So it'll just help us exaggerate like the width of his shoulders and stuff. So from there, kind of below the shoulder line, we'll put in some somewhat generous shoulder circles there, and those are just placeholders. They're not gonna look like that when we're done. And then I am gonna pull this a little bit, tiny bit further to the right, just because I want to give him nice broad shoulders. From there, we can just do this here. That's where the ribs kind of open up. And then we can go ahead and map out our hips. And just like before, we'll go ahead and make the hips about the same width as the widest point in our ribs. If not, then maybe a little bit inside of that point. And we'll do this. And we're not too worried about making this like a bucket or anything. We just kind of want placeholder here for now. And we'll readjust the hips as needed. But we'll make a small hip shape just like this. And from there we'll actually bring up the hips just a little bit. So it's basically got like around a head height in between the ribs and the hips here. And then from there, following our rib, we can just bring this line down to around this halfway point here, which is kind of where like the belly button would be. And then we can just connect to the edge of our hip here. And we'll have just the tiniest little bump out for the hips. We don't want to over exaggerate this portion, because then it makes him look like he's got too much of an hourglass figure, so he starts looking a bit more feminine. Next, we will add in some lines here so we can frame our core, as well as right here. So technically, see these little parts right here, so this little opening for our ribs, kind of how I've seen people express that on the more fit characters is by adding in this little line here. So this is kind of showing where the ribs are opening up a bit. So we'll do that, as well as add some slight ab definition here for our character. And then make sure we have our line here for the lowermost ab. And then from there, I am going to have to shrink my character a little bit. He's kind of taking up too much space on my page, so I'll shrink him down a little bit, like that. And then I need to bring this out a little bit more, so my character's a little bit more symmetrical, but a lot of that will get fixed as we go. You don't have to make it perfect on the first sort of sketch here. From there, we can draw in some lines for our character's legs. At roughly the halfway point, we can add in some generous ovals for our kneecaps. Then we'll come here to pretty much like a jaw length here. So like if the floor is right here, up to here for our ankles will be about a jaw length. And then we can put in some super simple feet. And I am going to real quick open the legs up just a little bit so that way he's not standing with both his feet right against each other. So I'll just move these over a little bit. There we go, give him a neutral standing position. And then I just want to make sure that the knees and feet and stuff are pretty much center with where the leg is going to socket into the hips. So we'll do that. From there, we can give some arm lines. And this time we're going to put the joint of the elbow kind of just around the end of the ribs here. That way we have a little bit more room to work with for building out our biceps. And then we'll add our wrist joint just below the hips, right there. So now we can actually start constructing this. We'll start with the legs. Just like in our previous male tutorial here, the thickest point of the quad is going to be kind of down in this area. The meat kind of extends and hangs out. It kind of gets thicker all around the quad right above the knee. And so we'll have a portion here. Then we'll actually have this muscle that we're going to pull from our knee and then kind of push it up this way a little bit. Because then right here we can connect right there. So this portion here that you're seeing is like hamstrings and abductors, whereas this part right here is one of the heads of the quadricep. Okay, so it's going to come up, curl back over towards like the hip over here, and then this portion we see, we just want to bring it like a shape like this. Okay, and so then we'll do the same thing over here. So again, having my thickest portion here just kind of above the knee, adding in a little definition there. From there, add in the other head of our quadricep, along with pulling it up towards the hip here. And depending on how low body fat your character is, that can be more or less defined. It doesn't have to be crazy if he's not at like single digit body fat percent. So you can make it as defined as you want, but for the sake of the tutorial, I'll have it pretty defined so that way you guys can see kind of what the muscles are doing. So we'll do that. Kind of bring it out a little bit more. And I'll work on the symmetry and balance in a bit, but for right now we're just trying to get the first sketch going. From there we can construct the calves. So just like normal, we'll kind of use some concave lines like this just outside of the knee joint. Just like this. That's like all the tendons and stuff. And this part, it's not going to get super thick even on our muscular characters. So we still want to keep it kind of small. From there, we'll start with the inside calf here. So again, we want to keep it a little bit sharper than what we would do on our female characters. This kind of gives it a sense of like rigidness. So we're going to do that. And we're going to keep the inner bump here a little less exaggerated than our outside bump, which will do something like this. And then it just tapers into this little area here where we can add in our ankles like so. And most people's calves are not so big that they're going to be overtaking the quadriceps or anything, but for some of our anime characters, when we're trying to really exaggerate muscle groups and stuff, it's okay to do that. But if you want, we can shrink the calves just a little bit. That way they're not as big as the quads here. Because I'm trying to make this fit anime man is just kind of like a not super over exaggerated muscular character, but still kind of pushing the boundaries. So you definitely, it would be pretty rare to see a person in real life who looked like this. We'll do this, kind of reestablish our ground line. Just super simple foot shapes here. I'm not trying to take up too much time since we're just doing a figure study here. From here, we can come back up to the shoulders. So what I like to do is, on our muscular characters, they have pretty pronounced shoulders. So just below our shoulder circle, start the shoulder line, and I'll kind of bring it up and then dip it down and just follow this line for the collar, like so. And we can actually, I'm going to shrink the shoulder just a little bit. I don't want them to look that jacked, so we'll just shrink these a little bit. But again, you can kind of mess with the overall size of the shoulder as much as you want. So I'll just do that again, and then I'll do that over here, like so. And since I moved the overall width of my shoulders, I'll go ahead and sort of recenter my arms here. There we go. Okay, this shoulder is a little bit smaller than the other one, so I'll bring it out a little bit, like so. And then from here, since our character is just kind of standing straight at us, the arms aren't going to be like crazy jacked or anything. They're kind of skinny from the front still. So instead, we're just going to we'll start out a little bit thicker here near the top, and then just kind of have a semi-sharp taper right at the socket of the elbow. And then we'll have our forearm here, and we want the outside of the forearm to be a little bit thicker than the inside, just because there's some muscle here that kind of rides up and works in tandem with the bicep, and so it tends to get larger on our muscular characters, more so than just this side over here, which is mostly just helping for grip. So we'll do this, and still try to keep the wrist portion a little bit thicker than what we would normally do. If it gets too thin, then the character starts to look like super freaky, which you can do on low body fat characters. But for now, we're trying to make this character look muscular, but not anything like super crazy and super exaggerated. But then we're pretty much just going to do the same exact thing over here, what we just did. Again, pretty generous forearm on the outside here. Follow the shoulders. Now we can put in our chest. So just almost imagine there's like a line here going through our shoulder, kind of following that, and we'll just bring the chest down and then kind of tuck it in. This one's a little too wide. We don't want it to come way out past the shoulder, because all of this shoulder muscle here is keeping all of this way outside of where the actual shoulder socket is, and the chest is basically just right in that area. So we don't want to have our chest line like way out here. So keep it kind of tucked in, like so. And then from there, we can go ahead and attach some lats. Just right here, just kind of connecting up. So imagine there's like a line coming up to the shoulders, kind of like that. We'll do that. This, and you can kind of mess with the balance of how much or how little muscle you want your fit characters to have. Like, this is definitely a pretty muscular character still, even though we're not going to fully exaggerate everything, but we're going to have some character tutorials coming up where we will go just full-on freaky with the level of muscles and stuff. So show you how to make some of those like super jacked characters. But all I did there is I drew the neck in. I kind of keep the neck on my male characters out near the little angled portions of the jaw when it swoops into the chin. That way it gives them kind of a thicker neck. And then you just want to really make sure that you don't make your traps too small. Like if they're in here, then it just looks very strange because our character's more built, so he's going to have larger traps. Okay, so then from there, we're just going to have super simple hands. I am going to have our hands kind of tucked away this time, so they're not just like straight on like this. Just because if our character's standing like that, it's going to change the rotation of the arm and do stuff differently to the muscles. So for now, we'll just do a very simple hand, just kind of tucked away to the side like this. So from here, oh yeah, and then we can quick add a little bit of definition there for the middle of our chest. So from here, I'll go ahead and do the line art. I'm just going to kind of go through it quickly because we already walked through the overall figure and what you're trying to accomplish. Because really all you're worried about is trying to get the balance right, get your characters as symmetrical as you can, going on from there. I'm not very concerned about the quality of my lines since I'm just trying to do a tutorial here. Don't want to take up too much of your guys' time. But for this, once you kind of have figured out the lines that you want, you can just kind of find a order of operations that works best for you, what feels most comfortable to just kind of work on the character slowly but surely. Just kind of following some of these lines we established, making little adjustments as I go just in case it's not exactly what I want. But you'll definitely want to, when you're done doing the line arts, you want to take a step away and reevaluate the piece to make sure that nothing was missed. I find, especially when I'm trying to talk through what I'm doing and draw, that sometimes I miss seemingly obvious things. So definitely trying to take a step away and make sure that it's like symmetrical and there's nothing that's glaringly wrong with it. But right now, just kind of working through, get the lats kind of poked in. And the lats are interesting. We'll kind of discuss this more in part 2 when we're looking at the back of the character. But there is a lot of genetic differences between how low your lats will go. So just kind of depending on person to person, that will be different. Some people have very short muscle bellies, and it's like this actually with all of the muscle groups. Some people have short muscle bellies, some people have very long muscle bellies. So you can kind of mess with it until you get the character flow that you want. You just want to make sure that the muscle groups are what they ought to be and not just looking like an alien or something. So this lat is, again, my eraser is massive for some reason. But yeah, this lat is a lot lower than the other one, so we'll put this one up. And again, I'm not worried about the quality of my lines, so I'm not too concerned about if they're intersecting or not. If you're trying to make this as like a nice finished piece, then you're going to want to use multiple layers. If you're doing it traditionally, you're going to want to really be careful with your line art, be very intentional with what you're doing. So you could even do this step here with still going lightly and just trying to establish the final overall line that you want. But there's a lot of really great traditional tutorials out there that you can find for more tips on that. I don't want to have to set up a camera and lighting and stuff so I can do a traditional tutorial. But there's lots of great sources out there with that you can use. So from here, just kind of doing the legs, we'll poke in our knee joint right here. I like to have a full line on this inside portion here, and then we can add in the tendons here that then go into the calves like so. And you can kind of mess with how sharp you want the angles on your muscle groups here. There's definitely like a point of diminishing return where it's like they can get so sharp that it just doesn't really look like muscles anymore. It just kind of looks odd. But you kind of want to mess with it. You can make them a bit sharper than what we would have on our female characters, and that'll kind of give them a rigidness and make them look a bit more masculine. So we'll do that. And from here, we'll just kind of frame out our abs like so. And oh yeah, good. I guess I just didn't do this forearm here. Super simple little hand shape here. It's just a placeholder. So there we go. All right. So I'm gonna quick take a step away and make sure I didn't botch any of this. And after I make corrections, if there's any to make, I'll let you guys know what I did, and then we will just do a quick final review and call it a day. So see you in a bit. Alright, so the only changes I made is I worked on this hip over here, made it a little bit more symmetrical with this one, and then this hand was not very symmetrical with this other one, but it's not a hand tutorial, so I really don't care. So made it look a little bit better, but basically everything else is what we want. Again, depending on how little body fat your character might have, you could consider adding in definition like up in here for the shin bone. Some people, if they're really thin, they'll just draw it like this, so it almost comes up right up to the knee like this. On this character though, with everything else going on, you could add a little bit in there, but pretty much that's everything. You can kind of push the sharpness of angles, although with a character at this level of muscle, you definitely want to still add in a little bit of curvature there, because if this was just like sharp like this, it'd look kind of crazy. So just kind of work at it to get the shapes that you want, to get the proportions you want. You can definitely use like bodybuilders as reference and stuff online, so you can kind of get the muscles the way that you want and kind of understand how the legs are structured and stuff like that. But for right now, this is a good first look at a muscular character. So hopefully you found this one helpful, and I'll see you in the next one where we will look at this character's back. So see you there.